Yoo Young-chul was born on 18th April 1970 in Gochang, Jeonbuk. His parents separated a few years after his birth. He moved with his father to Mapo, Seoul. His family lived in poverty, which led to him being bullied at school. At school, the wealthy made fun of him. Chul also struggled with this situation. As a result, he began to hate rich people because of the bullying he experienced. He thought that rich people were the reason for his poor life. Chul's father died in a car accident in 1985. In an effort to escape poverty, he decided that he had to work hard and succeed in life in order to change his life. Yoo had a passion for painting, playing the guitar and singing, so he applied to a high school specializing in the arts. However, he was not accepted because of his poor academic performance. He decided to go to another high school. Not being accepted to that school would have caused a deep wound. Finally, he got into a technical school that would accept him with his qualifications. Instead of working hard, he found a new way to make money fast by indulging in a life of crime. He already had a criminal record before he embarked on a major crime spree. In 1988, he was arrested for burglary. At the age of 18, he was caught stealing from a neighbor's house. It belonged to a wealthy neighbor. He was sent to a young offenders institution. But the punishment did not end there. As he was not allowed to go to technical school, he failed, and from then on his offenses increased rapidly. In 1991, he stole again and was sentenced to 10 months in prison. That same year, he married his girlfriend, and they had a son. Having a family would never stop Chul. He would not stop his life of crime. In 1993, he was arrested again for theft and sentenced to 8 months in prison. This time, he was caught stealing a car. After his release, he was diagnosed with epilepsy. Now it was time to find a way to steal money from insurance companies. After a few years, he did something even worse. In 1995, Yoo was caught selling adult films starring children. He was sentenced to 2 years in prison. He didn't rest easy again. In 1998, he was sentenced to 2 years in prison for theft, forgery, and identity theft. He spent his life in a life of crime. It was like a disease for him. While he was in prison, his wife tried to take care of the family. The person he married was not the right one. In 2000, he was arrested again for raping a 15-year-old girl and sentenced to 3 years and 6 months in prison. On 27th October, his wife couldn't take it anymore and divorced him. Chul was also released on 11th September 2003. Behind bars, he developed hateful fantasies. You read articles about Jong Do-young, a Korean serial killer who targeted rich people and thought about doing the same. The serial killer he was inspired by also killed rich people. He decided to do the same. He also started to hate women, especially after his wife divorced him. After Yoo Young-chul was released from prison in September 2003, he began to plan his first murder. He bought guns and practiced killing dogs. On 24 September 2003, he struck for the first time. This was only 13 days after his release. He went to Sinsadong, an upmarket area of Seoul, and broke into the 2-story home of Lee Daeok-soo, 72, a professor at Sukmyung University, and his wife, Lee Yoon-ok, 68. Lee Daeok-soo was stabbed in the neck with a knife. Before either of them could react, Yoo attacked them with a hammer and beat them both to death. Yoo made the scene look like a robbery, but nothing was stolen. From then on, Yoo's killing spree accelerated. On 9 October, he struck again. After breaking into another house, he smashed a grandmother's head with a hammer. The homeowner's wife ran downstairs and confronted her mother-in-law's killer, who kicked her in the stomach and demanded to know if there were other people in the house. The woman replied that her husband and son were upstairs. The killer continued to smash the woman's skull and walked over to her disabled son. Yoo forced him to kneel down and beat him to death. Her husband was not at home at the time of the murders. Another murder took place on 16th of October. Yoo Jun-hae, the wife of a millionaire, was threatened with a knife after Yoo entered the house. He asked her if there was anyone else in the house. When she said there was no one, he dragged her into the bathroom and beat her. The woman was found by her son, but later died. On 18th November, Yoo broke into another house. The maid, Bae Ji-hai, asked him who he was. Yoo showed her his knife and demanded to know where the master bedroom was. When he got there, he found the owner, Kim Jong-seok, lying on the bed. Yoo immediately beat him to death. Bae, who was holding a baby, tried to protect the child. She took the baby from him, put him on the sofa, and covered him with a blanket. He then beat her to death. Yoo, who had accidentally cut herself trying to open a safe, set fire to the house to destroy possible DNA evidence. Fortunately, the baby survived the fire. The police were stunned. The victims did not appear to be related, and the killer had not taken any of their valuables. Apart from some footprints and blurry CCTV footage, investigators had few clues about the killer himself. Meanwhile, Yoo had begun to focus on a different type of victim. His new target was sex workers. He had hated women since his divorce. He had even considered killing his ex-wife. But his hatred had only intensified after his girlfriend left him. Kus. His ex-wife worked in a massage parlor, and his girlfriend worked in a telephone company where prostitution was common. So the Raincoat killer targeted women who reminded him of them. He began calling sex workers from massage parlors in Seoul to his house. His house became a large graveyard. In December 2003, Yoo began dating an escort girl. At some point, however, the girl inevitably discovered Yoo's criminal record and told him not to see her again. This infuriated him and gave him the motivation to kill again. On 9th of February 2004, he killed Chung Young-dae, a street vendor. He then set his van on fire. On 16th of March, he fatally strangled Kwon Jin-hee, dismembered her body, and dumped her remains on a footpath near Sogang University. On 14 April, he killed An Jae-son, another street vendor, for selling him counterfeit Viagra. In May, Yoo called an escort girl to his apartment. He then beat her unconscious with a handmade hammer. While she was unconscious, he ended his life in the bathroom. After dismembering the girl at home, he cut off her fingertips to avoid fingerprints. He put her body parts in garbage bags and buried them in a mountain near Bongwon Temple. He used this new method on other girls. The tactics were always the same. Of course, he didn't just bury them. He also ate some of his victims. He believed that eating his victims would cleanse his soul. One by one, the girls disappeared. The massage parlor owners were aware of the situation. But these girls weren't worth as much as the rich people who lost their lives. So they didn't pay much attention to them. It was generally thought that they had run away. From time to time, these girls would run away from the massage parlors because their lives were not normal. This time they didn't run away, they were murdered. You eventually made a fatal mistake. As usual, he called the massage parlor to recruit girls for his house. But he used the phone number of one of his victims to call the massage parlor. The owner immediately realized that the number belonged to a missing girl and called the police. The massage parlor owner thought that since the owner of the phone was missing, the caller could be the kidnapper. The police also sprang into action. The police sent an officer to arrest Yoo, but the officer left before Yoo arrived. When the killer entered the motel where he had arranged to meet his victim, it was the massage parlor staff who arrested him. After the police arrived on the scene, they took the serial killer into custody. While in custody, Yoo confessed to all the murders. The police didn't even know there were so many murders. They were also shocked. Yoo Young-chul told the police that he was a very intelligent man. He claimed to have an IQ of 140. He'd been diagnosed with epilepsy before, so he tried to use that. He escaped from custody after pretending to have a seizure, but was recaptured 12 hours later. After Yoo was caught, the police asked to see where the bodies were buried to verify his story. The killer immediately accepted. Together with the policemen, he showed them one by one where he had buried the bodies. He was wearing a yellow raincoat. This yellow raincoat would become iconic. While he was showing the places where he had buried the bodies, the media teams were there. The media also called him the killer in the raincoat. Yoo first appeared in court on 6 September 2004. He apologized to the families of his victims but said he had no intention of stopping the killings. In other words, he did not regret the killings. His apology was an excuse. 2 weeks later, he attacked 3 judges. Instead of defending himself in the trials that began in September, he denounced more and more. In all, he killed 26 people. Yoo was due back in court on 4th October, but the night before he tried to kill himself. 3 weeks later, he attacked a spectator for swearing at him and later agreed not to cause any further disorder in the courtroom. On 13th December, he was found guilty of 20 murders and sentenced to death. His case, which horrified South Koreans, fueled the debate on the death penalty in South Korea. Although the death penalty is still allowed by law, it has not been carried out since 1997. Before Yoo's arrest, it was thought that the death penalty might be abolished, but support for the death penalty has increased since his crimes were revealed. He is currently being held at the Seoul Detention Center. The people of South Korea were very frightened by what had happened. They couldn't understand why such a man was in their country. Yoo was able to kill so many people for so long because of flaws in the Korean police organization. For example, the police only worked within their own territory and rarely shared information with other forces. When they did share information, it was only about successful arrests and never about the failure of unsolved cases. The arrest of Yoo Young-chul led to a serious change in the Korean police organization. Some people thought that the economic crisis of 1998 was the reason why Yoo-chul started killing. He had always said that his aim was to kill society. When he learned that money was the only way to live, he thought it was best to punish the rich. He was that punisher. He'd spent most of his life in prison, so he had no such fears. Yoo Young-chul, a documentary called Raincoat Killer, has been released on Netflix. It is also said that Chul's actions are mentioned in the film Squid Game and Parasite. Both productions are projects that deal with inequality in Korea. The 1998 crisis is said to have created some inequalities and deeply affected the public. To summarize, Yoo began by attacking the rich, old and weak, breaking into their homes and beating them to death with a hammer. He then made the crime look like a robbery murder, although he never received any money. Then Yoo started killing girls who were sex workers. He would bring them to his house, beat them with a hammer until they were unconscious and decapitate them in the bathroom. He usually dismembered the bodies and then buried them. He also killed 2 street vendors. Yoo said he sometimes removed and ate the livers of his victims, but it was never proven that he actually did this. He also pretended to be a policeman and even used a fake police card. He also burned the bodies of some of his victims. He usually wore a yellow raincoat and baseball cap during the murders.